Are people in the waiting room still? They're there. Hi, good evening. Welcome everyone to Nuclear Energy Information Services Night with the Experts. Tonight we have an expert, one of our local Illinois people, Dr. Albert Karvelis, and he's going to be speaking tonight about the Prairie State Generating Company's carbon capture from coal plants project. What could go wrong? So tonight, with Night with the Experts, what we do is we have our experts speak for about 20 minutes. And then after that, we turn it over to you. We flip the script on kind of the normal format for these things. And we give the majority of the time to you, the people who are watching the speaker, to ask questions and follow-up questions if there's enough time. So we do ask that people mute themselves until the Q&A portion starts. And this is recorded, and we will post this on our YouTube channel at some point in the future, so you can watch it or share it with other people again. And right now, I just want to say that my name is Gail Snyder, and I serve as president of the board of Nuclear Energy Information Service. We are based in Chicago, and we're doing this live on Zoom. I'd like our other members to introduce themselves tonight. We just have kind of a light crew here. So first, Jan Budar, would you like to say hi?
Oh, hi, I'm a board member of the Nuclear Energy Information Service and facilitator of Night with the Experts.
Great. And David Kraft.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us again this month. I think we're going to have a very interesting session tonight, so thanks for joining us.
And Dave is the director of Nuclear Energy Information Service. So I just want to say welcome to Dr. Albert Karvelis. Dr. Karvelis has identified two potential problems with this carbon capture project being funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, which he's going to go into tonight. Dr. Karvelis has a really incredible background. He's been retired for about 50 years of practice as an engineer, manager, and consultant in machinery design, testing, consulting, and a number of other items related to engineering, including nuclear reactors to medical devices. He has a long list, which I discussed with him. I'm not going to go into because he is going to describe some of the things that he's done that pertain to what he's discussing tonight. But he does have a lot of experience, and he has a master's degree from the University of Michigan, a PhD from Pennsylvania State University, where he was on the mechanical engineering faculty and a NASA fellow, and he's active in the Citizens Climate Lobby. So with that, Dr. Karvelis, welcome, and I'm going to let you get started. Thank you so much.
Well, a double thank you to you. First thanks is for allowing me to come address this group on a topic which is very near and dear to my heart. And then to Jan, who first contacted me and triggered a thought process. I hadn't worked in nuclear for 30 years in large projects, and I hadn't really given it any thought until she contacted me and said, "What are your thoughts on nuclear power?" And I sat there with a blank screen and wondered, what are they? So I will use this opportunity to go back and rethink, relearn, restudy, and learn what has happened, what's changed. But in the meantime, if I could have control of the screen, and let's see, I think I hit play. Can everybody see a picture of a coal plant?
Yes, looks great.
Okay, good. So this topic is really quite limited. If you don't live in Illinois, I wonder how interested you will be to stay for the whole talk, but it is important because it reflects on something that's happening in our country today with respect to climate change. The Prairie State Generating Company, which I'll refer to as PSGC, is downstate in Marissa. It is a unique animal. It is near St. Louis. It was built in 2012 and sits on top of a coal mine. So this is one of the few places I'm aware of in the world where they mine this big, beautiful, what they call clean coal. It's there in the picture for you to see. They burn it and then they provide electricity for a number of places in the Midwest and some in the East. And they emit somewhere between 13 and 14 million tons of carbon dioxide, greenhouse gas, per year. And that's not even counting the tons of methane and toxic coal ash that they generate. But there is a project that is underway. And it sounds very good on the surface. It's a carbon capture program. And as you can see at the bottom, I have an opinion on how that's going to go. So let's start. So the subjects that we're going to cover today is this $2 to $3 billion expensive carbon capture facility. It's planned. I'll tell you, I believe it's going to go forward no matter what, and I'll try to convince you of why I think that. I believe that it will fail to meet any objectives. The two objectives that we're talking about that are relevant, first is operational. Will it capture consistently, regularly, positively the carbon dioxide is supposed to? I don't think so. Is it net zero? Is it friendly to the climate? I mean, are we going to add less? Are we going to go to zero carbon from this facility? And the answer is no. Why do I think it's going to fail? Well, it has a number of indicia, what I call indicia of failure that I saw, and you'll see what set off alarm bells as I studied the project. The big threat up until last week, I felt, and it still might be, is called enhanced oil recovery. That this would be used for a rather nefarious purpose. And we'll discuss the antidote. Some things have changed in the last 10 days. And that happens to be Illinois Senate Bill 2421. I mean, the ink isn't even dry on that bill. It's just been introduced, and as we'll see, one of the things that it targets is to block enhanced oil recovery for this plant. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So just so that you can understand where I'm coming from, the relevant qualifications that are needed to understand this project is building plants and complicated ones. I worked for Babcock and Wilcox. It turns out that they are the ones that built the coal facility. A university outsider, you have to understand how this has been doing. I've worked with universities at NIU. I was adjunct professor of mechanical engineering, et cetera. And this is a Department of Energy sponsored project. And I've worked with the Department of Energy. The other two things are prevention and pathology. Prevention is working with a client or a company to prevent them from getting into trouble. And I've worked on many, many projects. I just picked some randomly out of thin air: the Mars lander, geothermal plants, medical devices, truck transmissions. I could go on. Failure analysis, that's where you come in as the pathologist, the crime scene investigator, CSI, and you look at the wreckage and you try to figure out what happened, why it happened. And I've done the projects, both nuclear, fossil, wind, solar, even aircraft crashes. So I think I have the right experience for it. Let's go. Why isn't it not going?
Oh, there it was. Now you got it.
Okay, We went through that. Here we are. Okay. Decarbonization. How do we accomplish decarbonization? I don't think I have to repeat anything to this audience, but decarbonization, the number one item is repurpose, replace dirty emitters with green. And what will that do? That will slow down climate change. Second is remove greenhouse gases. This is the only thing which will actually begin a reversal of climate change. Now, C is the sort of the not so good, but it's not so bad. This is reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that you emit. Some businesses, some operations, such as steel and concrete, are going to struggle in trying to reduce and to repurpose. In some cases, there is an activity called greenwashing, where people try to turn the dial down a little bit and claim that they are entirely green. This carbon capture project, sponsored by the Department of Energy, portfolio millions of dollars of clean coal projects. The objective is to keep fossil fuels alive by selling the idea of reducing the current levels of emission of carbon dioxide as the best mode. Well, to determine the actual benefit, whether a particular operation or project is greenwashing, or is it really of benefit to the climate and the community, you really need to do a life cycle sustainability analysis. And for those, okay, let's try it. Okay, so if you're not terribly familiar with sustainability analysis, what it does is it looks at a life cycle of a product, an operation, a company, et cetera, and it looks at the environmental, the life cycle, the climate, and various impacts of the product, the process, or the technology. So here's a little quick summary, just how broad this life cycle portion is. Typically, if you're making a product or a process, you get the raw material. You have to get raw material somehow. In our case, we mine it. So that costs energy, and that energy in turn creates CO2. You have to move materials. You got to make stuff with the materials. The power plant, for example, makes electricity, but it still uses energy on top of that, and it generates CO2. You have to ship and deliver. You have to use materials, fix or discard. And the reason I used stuff rather, which is not a really fancy technical term, but this is to simply indicate that almost anything, whether it's an automobile company or whether it's a power plant, it should be subjected at some point, or could be subjected to a sustainability analysis to find out, is it beneficial to the community and to the planet? So let's go on. I guess wrong again. Okay. All right, so carbon capture, just in case someone has missed it, here's what carbon capture means in the fossil power plant community. We start off with a power plant, and here's the equipment. The object that I'm talking about is this box here called carbon capture. This is the chemical processing and the pumps, the machines, and you can see from this picture, this is not like a muffler on a car. This is serious equipment. This will cost the facility $2 to $3 billion to make. Once the equipment captures the CO2, there are theoretically two paths that can be taken. Number one and number two. I'll go to number two first. Number two shows the CO2 traveling, and it can either enter a large vault that used to contain coal, or it could contain limestone with pores, the porous limestone, or it could be pumped into a saline aquifer. And so this is very high pressure pumps, showing here, putting it deep underground This is so that it stays there, and that's called sequestration. The second possible path is number one, and that is carbon dioxide, after it's purified in the carbon capture, is pumped into an oil field, what they call a depleted oil field. Now, when an oil field starts tapped for the first time, you remember those pictures in the movies where the derrick is up and the oil squirts into the air. It's all under high pressure and you don't have to do anything to get it out. Well, after time, it gets depleted. And then this is the last resort where you pump in clean carbon dioxide and you help push that oil out into an oil rig. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Why did I number it this way? Why did I number 1 and 2 when the carbon capture facility for Prairie State is being advertised as sequestration, meaning some combination over here? Well, the reason is, number one, 78% by some count or higher of all carbon capture is sent here. Historically, this is where all the carbon capture, most all the carbon capture goes. All right, we're going to guess again. Ha, guess wrong again. Okay. So while this project is simmering, the Illinois issued a requirement, a legal requirement for the University of Illinois to perform a study on carbon capture utilization storage in Illinois. The idea was to recommend what Illinois should do with carbon, with carbon capture, using the carbon dioxide, storing it. And let's see what, and interestingly, this is I think it's 194 pages long. It contains all kinds of things, but only in 2 little tiny locations does it ever mention the Prairie State Generating Company plant, and it refers to it as the world's largest. That's kind of interesting. Here's somebody went to an immense amount of trouble to do a complete policy document on carbon capture and storage, and yet they did not really spend any ink on this. And of course, people like myself, when they were touring, talking about this, tried to ask them questions about the Prairie State Power Project, and we received a very guarded answer. We'll see. We'll address it later. So that's something that is a little bit bothersome. Okay, so who's a fan of carbon capture? Well, carbon capture has been along for a long time. And I refer to carbon capture, I'm referring really to industrial carbon capture at the source, like a power plant, a steel mill, a cement plant. And it was a shock to me when I first learned almost 2 years ago that nearly $800 million of the taxpayers' money has been shoveled into, excuse the expression, shoveled into clean coal projects. Why? My first reaction was, wait a minute, this goes back to many administrations, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. How could there be possibly such tremendous monies and support made for this? And of course, here's this article. This talks about a Senator James Inhofe, a Republican of Oklahoma. And as I dug deeper, I found out that they enjoy enormous support for these so-called clean coal and clean energy projects from the community that is fossil energy centric. Now, the government, interestingly, here's the back when this was published, it said that they had provided $684 million, not to all projects, not to just cement, not just to iron, but to coal projects, resulting in only one operational facility. only one, after this kind of money has been spent. And there are very deep and profound technical reasons why that is so. And if I have time at questions and answers, someone can ask me that question, but I want to move along. Guess wrong again. Okay, clean coal project drivers. Again, it isn't just one senator. It's even in Illinois, there are people who really had to make compromises when the Clean Jobs and Energy Act was made. And they put in legislative language that says, and I quote, the state should encourage the use of advanced clean coal technologies that capture and sequester carbon dioxide emissions to advance blah, 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 and demonstrate the viability of coal and coal-derived fuels in a carbon-constrained economy. Well, by now you should be getting the message. The IIJ Act, which is the federal legislation which was signed before the IRA Act, in I think it was August of 22. That was in like November, I think, the IIJ. This is the Infrastructure Act that people talk about. Well, take a gander at this number. Look at this number, $12.2 billion administered by DOE and dedicated to carbon capture, sequester technology infrastructure. And here's some interesting wording, emphasis on storage and sequester from coal plants. Now, you remember I showed two different paths. There was one that goes to the oil fields, and there was one path that goes to sequestering, that's storing it deep underground with bypassing the oil. So that's what, there's the words in there. It says emphasis, it doesn't say restricted to storage requester. The IRA Act did an enormous amount of support for these so-called clean coal projects. Before, you had to capture 90% of the carbon dioxide to be eligible for real serious monies. Now it's 70%. Before, you could only get the money as carbon capture tax credits. Well, now they can just ship you the money in small paper bags. Permitting means getting permits for. It gives priority to coal projects, and you know which particular senator from which particular state was enthusiastic on that count. And I find as I began researching this project that Oklahoma, Texas, West Virginia, Wyoming are all jumping onto the bandwagon. That's wrong again. Okay, so if you recall earlier, I talked about this issue of sustainability and life cycle, and is it good for the community, and is it good for Earth? And so I took that picture of the carbon capture. By the way, if you look carefully, it says source World Coal Institute. So I added this carbon box here. But if you assume that this project goes forward, don't look over here yet, so go back to here, then the first thing that happens is to understand that of the 2 units at Prairie State Power, only one is going to get the carbon capture system. So while on days that it works, when the system works, you will indeed get reduced carbon dioxide from unit number 2. But unit number 1, which is responsible for half of the say 7 million tons per year, that's still going to be spewing 7 million tons of carbon dioxide per year. Anytime that you're working with coal, you have the opportunity to emit methane, and methane is about 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide as far as a greenhouse gas goes. Now, if it is decided at some point in time, and I'll show you what the mechanics might be, to go into enhanced oil and take the Prairie State Power and shovel it into oil fields, then we're going to get CO2 from oil. That is, you took the carbon, you crushed it, you burned it, You took the carbon dioxide out, you put it in, converted it to oil, and you burn the oil. Guess what? This is just short circuiting. You're just creating another path for carbon dioxide. I personally think the Earth benefits very little. Well, it won't benefit at all if they choose this path. This is why my early talks focused on this path for Prairie State, and whereas it may be helpful, somewhat helpful, if it takes this path. So whenever you're faced with a decision of a coal plant, for example, in Illinois, which is the #1 polluter in Illinois and #7 in the United States, there's other alternatives. There's wind, there's solar, and there's dialing the knob down. If you dial the power down from that plant, you will also be dialing down the carbon emissions. And where would someone go to have a respected scientist perform this sustainability analysis? Someplace with prestige, recognition, and the tools to perform a full and complete sustainability analysis. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the great University of Illinois. And they even, I guess right this time. So the they have a complete institute. It's called the Institute for Sustainability, Energy, and the Environment. Okay, so pay attention, remember this, and then we will now bring this up again soon. Okay, so what we have here is a discussion side on the left, and I have the cover page from a project closeout meeting. This is the project that was paid for by your tax dollars and some ratepayer dollars. Full-scale design study, it says FEED study. That means, according to University of Illinois criteria, it's just about shovel ready. So that means this isn't just a back of the envelope calculation. This is ready to rock and roll. You can just about start ordering the equipment. Come on. Okay, so this is the picture. Now notice, who do we have running this project? The director of the Illinois Sustainability Technology Center. Wow, so I found that when I first stumbled across it, I said, wonderful, we're going to get a sustainability analysis and we'll be able to see that this carbon capture is really not community or climate friendly. And I think you know that that never happened. As far as I know, there never was a sustainability analysis. No one did the comparison. No one did the study. No one determined whether or not this was rational or not. Okay, now let's talk about the design project. The design of the equipment, they claim, was 95% complete. The cost without overruns to build this equipment, to capture this from only one unit, would cost $2 billion without overruns. The taxpayer credits, that is what you and I would pay tax dollars to keep this thing going, if it worked, would be about $700 million per year. Now, what happens to the carbon dioxide once it's captured by the machinery called destination? That design was never fully addressed. There is no explicit documents, whether it's in the policy document for state of describes what is going to happen to that carbon dioxide. What I do know is there is no place to store it on the site of Prairie State. Okay, now in reading their final report, this was fascinating. I was just, that's where I learned something. in order to navigate through the environmental regulations, because they're going to be needing special water, they're going to be processing special chemicals. For $2 billion, you know the machinery is going to be very intense and create all sorts. Where did it get? Then what they said is, let's separate. To avoid environmental regulations, why don't we separate the carbon capture equipment from the plant? Okay, we'll cover that a little bit later. No sustainability analysis. Are there better ways to spend $2 billion plus $700 million a year? Is this the best way? That was never asked and it was never answered. Okay, so here's a question. We're talking about a coal-fired power plant. We want to make machinery to extract the carbon dioxide and ship it somewhere else. So the question that everybody should be asking is, has this ever been done before? What size was it done at? Was it done in a laboratory in the basement of a university, or was it done at the 816 megawatt power plant, which is just about one of the largest in the world? And the other question is, was it successful? Let's take a look. Okay, Petronova. This Petronova is in Texas. It was a plant that's about 1/4 the size of the proposed Prairie State retrofit. So we're talking about something which is comparable, like a small Beechcraft commuter plane on a giant 747. We're talking about a plant which was very small. The carbon capture equipment captured somewhere, depending on who you read, somewhere between 7 and 14% of the carbon dioxide produced. I think the numbers that the Department of Energy spent was about $175 million to help them. It was a Japanese company, investors, that did this. Now, what did they accomplish with this plant? Well, they produced when things were running, they produced 5,000 barrels of oil in one day. That's their claim to fame. So that is what this was for. So let's take a look at a graphic. This graphic I'm outlining, I took it from the Mitsubishi Heavy Industries site. Mitsubishi is the company which made the carbon capture chemistry for Petronova and is also working at Prairie State. In fact, most of the team at Petronova has gone over to Prairie State Power. So where did the captured CO2 go on days that it worked? Well, to an oil well. I couldn't resist that. How did they, so I put in the cloud, by the way. They show perfect green. So in their opinion, if you take a plant and you put it to make crude oil and you ship the crude oil for the cars, then it's green. You know, this just doesn't exist. I put the cloud in because that's reality. So let's take a look at how they sell it, because this is how the Department of Energy, our Department of Energy, sells it. Well, here's the technology that can simultaneously help prevent global warming. See how this is how you prevent global warming, this big, gigantic cloud, while increasing the production of crude oil. So now this is what enhanced oil recovery is all about. Okay. Petronova, is it operating today? No. It opened on December 30th, 2016, and closed on August 2020. Captured only 10%. So would you call that a success by any stretch of the imagination? Okay, here's what here's what the kind of press they got. Reuters, problems plagued before shutdown. Petronova mothballing closure, warning sign on carbon capture for coal. Remember, my focus is not on carbon capture of any kind. My focus is on this is an inappropriate use of technology, should not be used for coal. And then the US government, it's called the GA, Government Accountability Office. This is one of the few bipartisan organizations in Washington who took a look at their coal projects that they were trying to do. And this is the headline: government clean coal projects flopped, federal watchdog. Alarm bells. Remember I spoke to you all about them. So I read the final report from the Illinois Prairie Research Institute, which ran this particular program, this feed program, and they made noises about they have a new solvent that is really, really good, outstanding. It's a game changer. So I decided to research it. I went everywhere I possibly could go to find out, this KS21, are they right? Are they right? Does the testing show that this stuff is really a miracle, a solvent? And here I listed all of the relevant scientific data in supporting this particular chemical. But the marketing people in Forbes had no problems in praising it. They were right there. So does it? I don't know. But the fact that you are rolling the dice on a $2 billion facility and you believe that you have a wonderful solvent and yet you provide no support for it, boy. Okay. Another alarm bell went off. I was, as I said early in the beginning, I've been involved in Department of Energy projects and 53 years of engineering in all kinds of forms. And I have never, ever seen anything like this. The project which made the equipment, the project team management structure, this is from their report. They showed a steering committee. And the first time I saw it, I thought this was a misprint, but I guess it's not. The 50% of the steering committee of an engineering project to design equipment, that is, determine how many pounds, how many force units, how many gallons of this, and how many ohms of that, all of that. You don't need a CEO of a coal company. You don't need a public relations person. I don't know what they can contribute to it. I don't know what a financial guru can contribute. I certainly don't believe a lawyer can add anything to the calculations. And finally, a lobbyist. So I've never encountered this. This is really something I've never seen. Why would you saddle a steering committee on a project on the world's largest carbon capture project with all of these people? I don't know. I don't know what a lobbyist has. If you have a suggestion, I'm willing to listen, but I've never seen this. And to me, it sets off an alarm. Okay. If you recall, I said that there was discussion about the plant would be burning the coal and shipping the carbon dioxide, dirty flue gas, to the carbon capture equipment. And that this carbon capture equipment would be owned and operated, controlled in every single way possible by a separate legal entity. And so here's what we've got. We've got a coal plant, unit number 2, which whose main customer and boss, if you will, is the grid, the electrical grid. You have another unit, another entity, which is the carbon capture equipment, sharing back and forth this carbon capture, the flue gases, the dirty, the clean, shipping back and forth. Who are they responsible for? Investors. The people who invested the money. Now, the government, I don't think the Department of Energy is going to risk egg on the face and try to sponsor the entire $2 billion. But it wouldn't surprise me if they would come up with loan guarantees or some kind of underwriting, et cetera. And now the investors will probably be, are likely to be private industry. And I get this from a paper that the Prairie State Research Institute, the U of I organization, published a number of years ago where they first discussed this. So what we got, and they discussed about the fact that there'd be no communication, no control, that carbon capture would have no control on the coal-fired plant, yet they're motivated by different entities. So this is a situation of two steering wheels in one car. To me, that's an alarm bell. So to summarize this quickly, so here I listed my failure indicia. Overreach. They failed to do a successful job at a quarter size, that's Petronova, yet they're going to go for broke on something 4 times larger. So let me repeat. It started at ground zero. The first coal plant where carbon capture was attempted was Petronova. That didn't work. That failed. So now you're going to go to something 8 times larger. I think that sends off an alarm bell. The environment. I think it's impossible not to increase environmental damage and get net zero. In other words, you may be capturing carbon dioxide, but you're still generating the toxic chemicals, the mercury, et cetera. And you're making toxic coal ash. Supervision. This is what we talked about. We have a steering committee that's overstaffed with people that are more oriented to politics than they are to engineering. And as someone who taught for many years the senior seminar on ethics and safety, to me, that sends off double alarm bells. Miracle solvent. There's a claim that is really going to make a big difference. I don't know if it is or not, but again, it's an indicia. Separate operations, 2 different motivations. Motivations is misspelled, plus operational controls. That is a recipe to create problems. A permanent sequester. That sounds good because they've hinted that that's what they intend to do with the carbon dioxide, but there's no approved campus site. There's no approved location to put the carbon dioxide. So a pipeline looks like it's in the cards. Investor interest, as far as I know, it's being pitched, but as far as I know, nobody's taken a bite. My chief complaint used to be the EOR, but I think that's beginning to fade because I think that there are people in the Illinois legislature that are going to try to legislate against it in the SB. My chief complaint about this project is that no independent, honest sustainability and life cycle analysis was performed and disclosed to the public. And again, the same organization that houses the Institute for Sustainability could have had their staff do that, but they didn't. And therefore, my argument is we need to find an independent organization that's qualified to do sustainability and perform that on the Okay, so here's where the dollars come in. We're almost done. The IRA Act, Inflation Reduction Act, 1 year operating it without EOR, that is, if it literally buries it, the taxpayer is going to get to pay $722 million per year if it works. Come on. Hey, okay, if this is a very subtle point, but stay with me on this. If the entity which owns the carbon dioxide chooses instead to send it to an oil company and get paid for it, the government will only give them $510 million a year, only $510 million a year. So how much is oil per gallon? You do the math. It seems to me that the EOR, if it's a separate entity, you can do with it what you want. So what if your money, what if oil gets you more money by getting oil and getting EOR money together, gives you more than just $722 million. I don't know what the math is, but what you need to understand is that we as citizens, when that oil gets burned, there's going to be about 4 million tons of carbon dioxide in the air that would not have been in the air had they not used it for enhanced oil. So now you're going to have to extract it from the atmosphere. When you extract it, it costs $180 a ton to the taxpayer. So that to take that oil back out of the atmosphere, it will cost $510 plus $723, which is almost double to the taxpayer without EOR. So that's why, on a financial basis, enhanced oil recovery is bad. So the conclusion, and meanwhile, while all of these monies are changing hands, taxpayer paying $722 million or not, $510 million. Meanwhile, the plant keeps emitting 8.5 million tons per year of CO2, the other one which isn't treated. Okay, so the open questions are, the campus, that is the Prairie State, has no approved storage site. What's going to happen to? Who's going to tell us when? Is it going to be too late? On February the 10th, Illinois SB 2024 introduced legislation to protect owners' rights, people that own land, farmers, that the land underneath them, if it's porous and is used to store the carbon dioxide, that that they get some kind of reimbursement for it. Eminent domain, so that the pipeline companies can't just grab the land. And I believe with all those alarm bells, failure is expected. That always leads to two things: unexpected consequences and litigation. Who do you think is going to pay all the attorneys for all of this? I think that's it. Yeah, I just said that. That's the Illinois Senate bill. So if I ask that you follow anything which is on the pipeline and carbon going through the state of Illinois, and support Illinois 2421 if you can. That's it.
Okay, Dr. Karvelis, wow, you certainly laid out a sad story here with the dream of carbon capture. I kept thinking, really, they have no place to store this and they're proposing this project? And I kept thinking boondoggle, how they're compartmentalizing the two entities of the carbon and the sequestration into different companies that can then, you'd have to battle between them when they mess things up. And I wonder what this kind of a model is like, this kind of way this deal is being structured, and how is it copying any other models, or is it going to be laying out models for future projects with other, I was thinking small modular nuclear reactors. Are they going to be trying to structure things in a similar way? And also just the incredible amount of money. And, we know we're trying to get more renewable energy built here in Illinois. So to see this kind of money go towards that is really upsetting. And I don't think people realize, and I would say I didn't realize how much money goes into that oil production side of it, which is pretty darn disappointing. And it is, as you say, it's kind of a greenwashing of carbon sequestration and what really happens in the end.
The motivation is to keep oil front and center, not the carbon just happens to be a vehicle in which you keep selling coal and oil.
Yeah. Okay, so I know people will have questions, and I'm going to pass this over to Jan, who's going to run the chat. Jan's going to explain to everybody. I see we have a few people who have raised their hands, but Jan will explain how the chat will work. Go ahead, Jan.
Okay, this is the Q&A, and it looks like I got the wrong thing up here. Wait a minute. Well, I think I can just tell you. Everybody is entitled to one question and one follow-up. Sometimes people want to follow up with 3 or 4 questions, and it uses up the time and causes things to get some people not to be able to ask a question. So we're going to allow one follow-up, but not 2, and you can ask another question at the end if there's time. And Clark Bullard is going to ask a question first. I don't know if I want to make sure that the people here understand that there is a group in Southern Illinois called the Eco Justice Collaborative, and they're having a meeting at exactly the same time as this meeting about legislation regarding the CO2 pipeline that is being projected for the area. And so I just want people to know about Eco Justice Collaborative for information about pipelines to transport carbon dioxide that's been captured. So I want to call on Clark Bullard. You go ahead, please.
Hi.
Clark?
Yes. I wanted to ask about the difference between capturing carbon from a coal plant like Prairie State versus capturing it from these natural gas plants that are being built throughout the state. Is it more expensive, less expensive? Could you leave with Dave Kraft some references that might show quantitatively what the cost and performance differences are between capturing it from coal smoke or gas smoke? And since I can't ask my second question, I'll just put it in the form of advice. Follow the mercury, which now goes up the stack, which is going to go in the water and then into fish, and then make more Illinois waters unfishable. That's all.
Okay, I think I understand your question. I will make a comment that I have a hearing issue. Spent too much time around airplanes and machinery, so sometimes the computer is matching up. It cuts off the high frequency. So if I stumble a bit, it's because I didn't understand your question. But your question is what is the difference between carbon capture from a natural gas fired facility versus a coal? And without going into a long discussion on it, there is a fundamental difference between the two that is key, and that is the carbon in natural gas is of a fixed percentage. I don't have the numbers in my head, but they're smaller. And in fact, that KS21 slide I showed, where I said there's not been testing shown that KS21 is so good. They tested it for in Norway for 3 months, which in the world of boilers is nothing. And they on natural gas, and they found that it behaved well. Well, the problem is that in a coal plant, what happens is you move the power level up and down, like your car. You know, sometimes you're going 30 miles an hour, sometimes you're going 40, sometimes you're going 50, sometimes you're going 60. As you change the levels of power that you are generating, the concentration of carbon dioxide in your exhaust gas changes. So it's easier to optimize for the carbon capture for a gas facility because it's fairly constant compared to coal. And that's what they found in Petronova, is that they had you can put the chemicals in that are good for a very high concentration of carbon dioxide, but as they turn the volume down, if you will, the carbon dioxide gets less. What happens is you got to pour more chemicals in because this is a contact sport, the chemicals with the carbon dioxide. So there is a fundamental difference, and it accounts for why I believe, and that's why other people have said that also that a coal plant's the wrong facility to try this on because of the concentration levels of carbon dioxide change, and you've got to match everything up. Now, as far as expense goes, I don't know the answer to that question. I have not looked at the financial comparison between the two. I don't know how you'd compare the two other than you'd find a gas plant, power plant, and compare megawatt to megawatt, but there is no gas plant that I'm aware of that puts out 1,600 megawatts.
Okay, and Clark, you can ask your question about mercury if you want to, because you do get a follow-up.
Okay, I thought the follow-up had to be on the same question, but anyway, yes, thank you. I think I said it anyway with the mercury.
Yeah.
There is some regulation of air emissions in mercury, but there's also a trading cap and trade type of aspect to it, I believe. But whatever mercury is going up the stack now, it's going to be attached to the particulate matter. I'm not sure how the particulate matter, how much of it's going to end up in ash versus water, depending on how this process works. And so that's why I think it's definitely worth following, because of the public health connection.
Yeah.
And with the gas plants, it's just it's probably going to be easier and cheaper on gas. Number one, because it produces less carbon dioxide per megawatt. And second is most of the other stuff it produces is H2O, which is really easy and cheap to condense out, I think, in theory. But so anyway, I'm suspecting that these gas plants are going to slide by with a lot lower costs and therefore be a more imminent danger. Thanks.
Thank you. And Dave Kraft, would you unmute, please, and ask your question?
Sure, thanks, Jan. To be honest, it's less a question than a framing set of comments that I had hoped to get in. There may be some who are kind of bewildered why a nuclear safe energy and anti-nuclear organization would take the time to talk about carbon capture and storage. But I wanted to give a little background of the group and why we took the time to do this today. Back in 2007, a friend and colleague of ours, Dr. Arjun Makajani, wrote a book called Carbon Free, Nuclear Free, a roadmap for US energy policy. And we were on board with him endorsing that concept that we had to move to energy systems that are both fossil free and nuclear free. But as far back then, Arjun was saying, in spite of our best efforts with renewables or efficiency or whatever, at some point we are going to have to face the fact that we have to get the carbon out of the atmosphere, or at least some of it that we put up there. Now, the issue is how best to do it. And I think that's the crux of the discussion tonight. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted Dr. Karvelis to be with us. NEIS has had a program called We Can't Nuke Climate Change since 1999, actually. But as I said, we are definitely on board for shutting down the fossil fuel industry as quickly as possible. I happened to view the presentation that Dr. Karvelis gave to the state agency that issued the report that he referenced in his presentation tonight. And back then, one of his view screens were the predictive indicia of risk and failure. And when I saw the list that he had there, my jaw dropped, because the parameters that a seasoned professional of 50 years was using to examine this project is exactly the same kind of blueprint and parameter that we are using to examine the next generation of nuclear power plants. And I would, a little bit of advertising here, next month we will have an expert who is well-versed in the issue of small modular nuclear reactors. And you'll see that Dr. Karvelis's criteria very much apply to the next generation of nuclear. So we were just thrilled to have him here tonight to get across not only the specifics of why the carbon capture at Prairie State is a disaster, and the fact that it enriches the oil industry as well as opens up the prospect for the pipelines, but also that it's great to have somebody with a objective, professional, scientific mind doing the analysis instead of invested PR people, lawyers, as you pointed out, and those kind of folks making the decisions down in Springfield. So I wanted to kind of frame the next round of questioning with those concepts in mind, that there is an area of overlap. There is an area of agreement that the fossil industry must end, and we have to work together to stop these boondoggles and these false solutions to climate change. So that's as far as I'll take it, and I'll turn it back to you, Jan. And I will thank you again, Dr. Karvelis. Terrific set of criteria, and we love them.
Okay, don't forget to lower your hand. Gail has a question, and so go ahead, Gail.
I didn't know, Dr. Karvelis, did you want to respond to anything Dave said
Oh.
before I ask your question?
Yeah, what was interesting is in his last sentence, David used the word boondoggle. You know, it's not a word that it struck a chord with me, because the thing that I was shocked the most when I began this a year and a half ago, what completely shocked me was how much money has been put to keep the fossil community alive. And I always viewed the Department of Energy, you know, as being more academic, but pouring money into a commercial scale, world's largest commercial scale project is frightening from a taxpayer point of view. You know, it may work, but you don't roll the dice. I mean, we have industry to do that. We have investors to do that. Let them lose the money. I mean, we have research that needs to be done. We need a lot of work done, but I'm stunned by the huge amounts of money that are bandied about. $688 million. I've never heard about it.
Yeah, you know, actually what you just said there kind of leads to my question to you, and it's really about the Department of Energy. And the Department of Energy, you know, serves a lot of masters. we hear a lot of politicians talking about this all of the above strategy for energy policy. And I think that kind of an approach dictates down to the Department of Energy, or maybe the Department of Energy dictates that. I don't know how it works sometimes, as to, what our energy policy is and who are the winners and losers the Department of Energy funds projects for. And so I'm just wondering, when you analyze this, like you said, a year and a half ago, and you started to look at this, do you wonder what is happening that the Department of Energy is pursuing this in this way? I'm just wondering if you have any ideas about that. Is this just the industry driving this, and we're trying to promote U.S. industry, whatever it is, however bad it is, or what are do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, yes and no. If you recall, I showed a headline, the GAO, the Nonpartisan Government Accountability Office, basically not chided, but they were unhappy with how congressional money was being spent. And I have two theories on this. And these are only theories, hypotheses, what you will. I don't have photographs or tapes or anything, but I do know from my time in Washington, when I was stationed there, that the most important thing in Washington is to know whom to talk to. It's a gigantic bureaucracy, and the lobbyists, the reason the lobbyists make so much money is they know who has the authority to spend money and how much they have to spend. That's been true since my first tour in Washington in 1968. Nothing has changed as far as that. The second, so I think that plays a role. The articles that I found on the Oklahoma senators and Texas senators are very supportive of it. I also understand that if you want to pass bipartisan legislation, I'm talking about the IRA Act, you're going to have to compromise if you want to get those 60 votes. But I'm still stunned by the years and years and years of support, even when it made no sense to me why so much money was going in that direction. But again, I never really looked at how much money the Department of Energy spends. So maybe they have a bigger budget than I'm aware of, and Fossil has the ear to them. And in order to pass legislation, you have to compromise with people that are from oil states. I mean, after all, Oklahoma and Texas and depend and Wyoming on oil and gas, and West Virginia. So if you want them to help you, you're gonna have to compromise. That's all I can do is to figure out. I mean, I don't know what happens for any particular bill.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So Ace, would you please, okay, go ahead, Ace.
I wish I could read all this. My eyes aren't good enough. With some interesting things on the chat.
Well, we'll save the chat and send it to you, and you can put it in your computer and expand the type.
Oh, good.
That's what I do. Okay, go ahead, Ace.
Oh, sure. It was a wonderful presentation. I have two quick questions. I think they're quick anyway. One is how much energy does this carbon capture machine use as a percentage, I guess, of the total? And then the other kind of connected question is, if the utility had a reason to shut down one of the plants because maybe there was enough renewable coming in at a cheaper rate, which one would they choose to shut down? Those are my two questions. And again, I really appreciated the presentation.
Oh, wow, two great questions. Can we bifurcate them? And because I think each deserves a very good answer. So let's split them into two questions.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can you rephrase the first one?
Just how much, as a percentage of the amount of energy that the coal plant puts out, how
Okay,
much energy does the carbon capture actually use?
okay, this is interesting because I'm glad you asked that question. I could bring up can I have control of the screen for a second? I want to show you something.
Yes, you're a co-host. You can do it anytime.
Okay, so where's my? Come on. Why? Here we go. Okay, can you see the screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is, there we go again. So this is very simple. This is a 1,000 megawatt hypothetical plant. And it's rated at 1,000 megawatts. It sends 1,000 megawatts of electricity out, and it burns coal and it produces toxic coal ash. All right. What's been accepted all along historically is that carbon capture takes about 25% of the energy of the megawatts to run the operation. That's the answer to your question. So if you siphon off 250 to run the carbon capture plant, then you're only delivering 750 to the grid. But of course, you're still making all the toxic coal ash. Now, the Prairie State thing is kind of interesting because it's trying to figure out how they're going to play that without diminishing the power that Prairie State is going to produce. The way they're going to do that is this: they're going to take and buy a certain amount of electricity from the grid themselves. So they're going to take electricity that's from the grid, bring it back here, buy it, and nobody will know what they paid for it because this is a separate company. So they will use that to run the equipment. They will share resources like water, etc. And there's one other thing they're going to do. I forgot but what it is what this is this lack of transparency, and it's all going to be couched in this is proprietary. How anybody can call something which was everything was designed by taxpayer dollars. Every nickel of this design project came from taxpayer dollars, and then you're going to tell me it's proprietary and you know how it's going to be done, but it's roughly a third. Basically, the rule of thumb is a third. They have said that it is going to be much less, but we will never know. But when you buy off the grid, when you buy electricity from the grid, you are going to do some of that is going to be coal, some of that is going to be oil, some wherever. You're going to create more CO2 from that electricity. And then they're going to bring in, I forget, okay, that was the other thing. They are going to bring in natural gas, feed it into this thing, and burn it to fire the boilers for the steam that's necessary for the carbon capture. So as far as generation of CO2, you'll have to take into account, they may still send out 1,000 megawatts, but their methane will create a fraction of the 250 in carbon dioxide, and so will the electricity that is hidden from you. But meanwhile, important thing is that I made these in opposing colors so that to highlight the fact that no matter what, it's to catch your eye, basically, that toxic coal ash is always produced, no matter what game you play with, where you buy your power from. Okay, stop share. Now, what was the second question?
Unmute, Ace. Ace, you need to unmute.
So I had to
Oh.
uncover it. It was, the other question was which would they prefer to run, but I think they're probably going to prefer to run the one that does not use carbon capture if they can turn one off.
I think to an engineer, it seems to me, from a very simplistic point of view, if you have this problem of 2 units producing, each one producing 7 million tons of carbon dioxide. I know for a fact that you can turn the dial down on both of those units so that it just runs at some 420 megawatts. You will cut the carbon dioxide by 7 million tons of CO2. Your cost to do that is going to be next to nothing except for the cost of the taxes that you pay. I think of course there's issues, the property tax to the communities. However, the University of Illinois has done a study a number of years ago that says the community impact, if I remember correctly, of that plant in that area of Illinois is $700 million. So it would seem to me it would be logical to turn the dial down, either turn off one unit or turn both units down by 50%. You cut it 50%, the same amount that you would cut if you spent this incredible $1 billion plant, and then you use some of that money to try to figure out how to support the property tax loss. But you see, my point is that if the university had done, Sustainability Center had done a proper analysis, all of that would be laid out, and then the people like City of Naperville, one of the 30 owners the people that own this plant, can then decide, what do we want to do? What does the government want to do? How do we want to spend our money? But when nobody has done an independent sustainability life cycle analysis, then we're at the mercy of whatever somebody says goes.
Yeah. Thank you for that answer. And now I'm going to call on Pat on the grounds that Dave's already had something to say. So we're going to call on Pat Walter and then Dave again. Go ahead, Pat.
Hi, Dr. Karvelis. I'll try to talk clearly to my microphone. I understand I have to almost put my head right next to the screen. So if you don't understand me, it's my positioning. So thank you so much. I've been trying to follow, and I've been trying to follow a lot of the stuff for a number of years, but I do not have a scientific background. But from my interactions with my local legislators, they don't either, for the most part. So I try to use myself as kind of a sounding board in various discussions with them. And I have to say, even though I've tried to follow, I'm still missing parts. For one example, in the write-up that Dave sent out for the email about it, you talked about how the captured CO2 will in essence be recycled back into the atmosphere. I don't understand. I'm sorry, but that, and you may have covered that, but I don't understand it. I'm sorry. I'm just a retired office person.
No, that's you. I think you took me too literal on the words, but so I'm to blame for your confusion, not you. So let's look at this. Let's take a look at the. Let me get the screen again. Yeah. Come on, why aren't you? You know what? I'm gonna use this slide. Yeah, because I just don't want to go hunting up and down, waste your valuable time. So this is just a box diagram. You use machines to capture the carbon dioxide in this box. Okay. Now you then ship it to transport. That's pipelines, whether it's a big pipeline or a small pipeline, it doesn't matter. You have to take it somewhere. And there's three possible places that you can send this carbon dioxide to, right? You got to send it somewhere. You
Okay.
can send it to industrial use, which allegedly now means you make plastics or you feed bacteria to or use it for cement or whatever. So that means that the carbon on this path is in fact stored in cement or whatever. If you sequester it to put it underground in a saline solution or into porous rocks that stays there forever, this carbon dioxide travels from here to here and it goes underground and stays forever underground. Now, the third path, which is enhanced oil recovery, the carbon starts here, the CO2, it goes into the pipeline. From the pipeline, it goes into the ground, which creates oil that otherwise might not have been made. So what comes out? Oil comes out here. If I had a pen, I don't know, can I draw on it? I don't know. Yeah, for those of you that like science, here's a good one. But what happens, some people feel cheated if they don't see an equation, but so the carbon comes in here and it gets converted essentially into oil. And what happens to the oil? You don't use it to water your flowers, you use it to burn it in industry or your car. So now it comes out as carbon dioxide. It may not be the same molecule that started here, but when you look at it as a system, anything that enters enhanced oil recovery leaves as oil, gets burned, and becomes carbon dioxide. So that's what I meant by recycled. It's not the same molecule, but you're playing a shell game. You're moving CO2 from one location, and it's coming out. You're capturing it in Illinois, and it's being emitted in Miami and Los Angeles and Dallas as in car fuel.
Well, just to sort of, you can call this second continuation or whichever. So this EOR, is that in place, proposed in place? I mean, I don't, because you have, like you said, a bunch of slides, and I'm sorry to call them a bunch of slides, but from us office people, it's a bunch of slides.
No. I mean.
So where was the?
I'll show you. Hold on just a second. Let's go back to.
Just.
What?
See, I'm just trying to think simpler.
Here we go. Okay. This is the Prairie State plant. This is the unit number 2. The capture facility, compressor, pipeline, goes injection well. And from the injection well, it forces oil out into the crude pipeline, which goes into the city and gets burned. So now that I have the diagram, what is your question? Oh.
I need the diagram again. That's this, well, maybe you'd hit it before and I just didn't remember it.
I'm keeping my hands away.
Sorry, good, I understand. So, okay, so has this Prairie State actually started? Or it's being proposed?
Oh, I get you. Yeah. Right now, the engineering for the plant has been completed. That the Federal Department of Energy has paid for the engineering for this box here. That's already paid for. And it's almost ready to go out, not really quite, but almost ready to go out for bids. So if someone comes up with money, then they will pull the trigger and make this happen. In the meantime, this section right here, the pipeline is on a separate Department of Energy program, would you believe? And they're examining locations where to bury this. And they tell us they're looking at this. You just bury it into not an oil reservoir, but underground, period. However, as I said before, these people who own this, if this goes forward, if they are independent of Prairie State and they are investors, they can do whatever they want with it. I suppose they could send it here, or they could send it to the pipeline to Texas to be put into crude oil. I don't know. I would like to know. All I'm asking for is that the Prairie State Power Plant and/or the Illinois Prairie Research Institute declare what they're doing. At this point, there is no. Let me go back another chart. Okay. Okay. There is a Department of Energy project which is looking to get this approved by the federal government, that this area underneath the plant, in the vicinity of the plant, is in fact going to be permitted to accept CO2. It has not been permitted, and there is legislation, I think, from that ECHO. I think the ECHO group, the pipeline group, is working on understanding what's going on there.
Yeah.
Worrying about liability, for example. If this comes in here and is stored here and it leaks out, or if this pipeline blows up, because remember, this is at 1,500 PSI typically, like it did in Mississippi. There it goes again. So there's issues on liability, there's issues on who's in charge of permitting, and that's going on right now. And this plant, the carbon capture plant, is waiting for an investor and a green light. But not connecting these two is strange. And this is kind of like things are moving, but if you have to watch all three of the shows as they operate, otherwise you'll miss it. Was that helpful at all?
Yes. And what you did, which is what is important to us non-engineer folks, is that you were saying that basically part of this process arrangement combination has been planned, but it potentially has to have some people who actually will implement the plan. And of course, the first thing that strikes me is that just looks too close to pictures about fracking.
What?
It looks too much like fracking. I mean, who knows what's underneath there? You just don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think we
Thank you.
need to go to David's comment, and then I want to make a comment. Go ahead, Dave.
I didn't want to cut Pat off or Dr. Karvelis if you wanted to respond to that. Let me just check before I start.
I
Okay.
couldn't understand what you said.
I didn't know if you wanted to respond further to Pat's comment, or if so, go ahead. I'll wait.
I'm just thinking, I think she's correct in stating that there's a waiting period for something to happen. And I think from what I've heard from the rumor mill, that there are discussions that are unofficial discussions going on between Prairie State and people associated with the grid and et cetera. And I don't know what credibility that has, but as I watch a similar project evolve in New Mexico, which is more transparent than this particular project, what they're doing in New Mexico is trying to get, looking for loan guarantees, looking for investors. They failed for 2 years looking for investors under the old plan of per ton of carbon capture. So it would be unrealistic for us to believe that everybody is sitting quietly doing absolutely nothing, while there's $722 million waving in the air of potential money. So, and I'm sure that the Department of Energy sincerely wants to reduce, I'm sorry, what people in Department of Energy want to do is to be able to say to their bosses and to the Congress to say, look, we reduced, here's what we have a project, we reduced the carbon this, we did this, we sponsored this, and because of our efforts, this happened. And that's just a normal human response. So I think there's things happening, but you have to connect the plant and the storage, and that, how that's going to connect, I don't know.
Okay, Dave?
Okay, thanks. I know your presentation has largely focused on the technical aspects of things, but our experience with the nuclear industry is that any of these technologies are broader. They have sociological impacts and environmental as well. And one of the questions I have in particular on this project, did the Prairie State report, or have you seen any information from the companies themselves indicating how many additional workers this will bring to the site, and also what effect that's going to have on the local tax base? Because what we have found, certainly in the nuclear industry, and I'm sure you found it in the coal industry, is that when you create company towns, you create a very dedicated and loyal set of followers and advocates with the population because of the tax base and the jobs issue. So I'm very curious, how many new jobs are we talking about here, if any, and what effect on the tax base of this project is expected to have?
Wow, that's a very interesting question, because you pointed out, or you brought to my attention something that I have observed but never really reacted to, and that is, unlike other carbon capture projects, such as the one in New Mexico, the Enchant Energy, where people are constantly talking about jobs and et cetera. This place has been rather silent about this. That's really interesting. I've not come across anything in terms of touting this as an opportunity for new jobs. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that I haven't run across it, and I've been combing the web for a long time, and maybe I've overlooked it, but I don't remember seeing it. Seeing it in large capital letters anywhere. Now I may have to reread that report. Now I keep a bibliography, a running bibliography of my work on this carbon capture and et cetera. And that's something which I am willing to share, send you a copy. And, if you, these are, some have my notes scribbled on them, but I try to keep a running resource, and I've been contacted by a number of people who are interested in reading through it. And if you're interested in looking at my bibliography, you're more than welcome to get a copy. Just have to ask.
Yeah, and we'd be happy to distribute that if people contact us. If I could just do a quick follow-up, Jan. Your response also indicates maybe the Prairie report does have a section in there, but I would wonder, doesn't this project have to file some sort of an environmental impact statement or analysis? And definitely in there, you do have to account for socioeconomic variables like jobs and employment and stuff like that.
Well, interesting you should say that. I read the report, I guess the problem with commenting on this project is that the transparency is really not that good. Most all reports that are issued on Department of Energy, like the ones that I've worked on, when you write a final report, and also Petronova, you describe what it is that the assignment that you had, what you did, what your successes are, what all of this. The piece of paper which is titled Final Report that was put out by the Prairie Research Institute was very strange because it covered this and it covered that, it covered environmental. But it did not give a big picture. It basically gave me the understanding that, let me backtrack. What it did is it described to me that in order for them to get permitting, like you said, the environmental permitting, they first have to solve the problem of what kind of whether the carbon capture facility is part of Prairie State or whether it's an independent. And they indicated how they went along and analyzed. They finally said, if you want to avoid environmental regulations, they didn't use those words. They just said, if you want to avoid the work associated with that, you should just declare it as a separate entity, and perhaps that will work. And so that's a long ways from a filing that you're asking me about. But that's right. That's where I learned that there is a plan, and it corresponded to something they said in their paper in the GHGT, Greenhouse Gas Technology paper that they presented back in 2019, and where they said that they're looking at that a separate entity as an operator owner. I think that's where I got that from. So no, as far as I know, there has not been any formal filing. And perhaps it's because they don't have a approved, permitted site to put. That's a lot of, and first of all, they're not going to get to it. I don't think they'll ever get 8.5 million tons. But they'll get a lot.
We have gone way over time. We projected this to end at 8:30, and now it's almost 10 minutes past that. But there were two people who put a lot of things in the chat, and one of them has left us. I'm really sorry that we didn't get a chance to ask Joan Seaman to give us a little summary of what she wanted to talk about. So because she's not here anymore, I'm just going to go ahead to Michelle and ask Michelle to kind of summarize what she put in the chat, and ask people to save their chat and be sure to look over both what Michelle has to say and what Joan Seaman has to say. So Michelle, would you mind going over what you put in the chat and doing a summary if you can?
Yeah, it all started on a very sad day in January 2008 when I was sick. And so I spent the day watching C-SPAN. And I watched the carbon capture storage hearing with John Kerry when he was the senator. And I just lay there with my mouth open and basically screaming at the TV set, like, are you kidding me? And then I watched like a lot of other hearings on the topic. And what I, putting aside the details of any particular project, when you start to critically think about these projects, what you realize is the amount of buried infrastructure that has to be built. You have the pipelines, right? What could go wrong with a pipeline? Well, we sort of know what can go wrong with pipelines. But even besides the hazardous disaster thing, you're going to have them crack. So over a period of time, there's going to be seepage. There may be unique geographic areas which can contain this gas, but for the most part, the amount of massive buried infrastructure that would have to be built is going to end up deteriorating and re-releasing the carbon. Ultimately, it's going to seep up and go right back into the air. But yeah, the word boondoggle just seems to sum it up. And what Mark Jacobson, who also did a report, I didn't throw into my rants on the chat, but what he's brought up also is you're dealing with a huge opportunity cost which is also a very long period of time of delay of capturing of reducing the carbon emissions. But it's the same problem that you have with new nuclear reactors. If you're really talking about the long periods of time any of these projects would take to become effective, even putting aside all the money and the problems that always occur. I'm a lawyer, so believe me, I can tell you about problems that occur in litigation on big projects. But even putting those aside, you're really talking about starting to reduce the carbon emissions in about a decade. Well, by then it's too late. And you've wasted billions of dollars that could be going into solutions that could be put into place in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So obviously a lot of those solutions are always proposed as renewables and storage and battery, but you have a vast opportunity. And I think Dr. Karvelis would recognize this with efficiency. I mean, the people who are working in these industries are so many of them are so well suited to be put into action to increase efficiency in so many different industries and buildings and so forth. But because there isn't one lobby group that's the efficiency lobby, it just doesn't get put into the public policy. So I'm just frustrated. That's it. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I think I really want to say something, and that is carbon dioxide is heavier than air. And when it is put into the atmosphere with a lot of carbon dioxide, it sinks to the earth. And there have been really spectacular examples of huge bubbles of carbon dioxide coming up from a pond in South America or Africa and rolling down the hillside, wiping out herds, wiping out villagers, the villagers who stood up from, in the middle of the night, they stood up because they felt something wrong or they panicked or something. They survived. The ones who stayed laying in their beds didn't, because carbon dioxide is extremely dangerous and it does sink to bottoms of things. So there was that natural thing that happened. And then there was the accident in Mississippi that was another really spectacular accident where there was a tremendous amount of carbon dioxide spilled out of a pipeline. I really want people to understand what's going on in Southern Illinois and what's going on with the Eco-Justice Collaborative, because these pipelines that hold carbon dioxide, they're going to leak. And if extra carbon dioxide gets into the air, it's just not good for people. It's not good for animals, etc. And I do apologize for taking time. It's very late and we've been here for 1 hour and 45 minutes. So I'm going to turn it back to Gail, and I hope everyone will read Joan Seaman's contributions to the chat. Oh, and Ace just put something in too. Oh yeah, there's going to be another one of these talks with Mark Jacobson. And actually, I got onto Albert because he was on a seminar with Mark Jacobson and Joan Sakaris. So that was where I actually met Albert, and the seminar was great. And it was put on by the Eco Justice Collaborative. So it's a resource that people should be paying attention to. Okay, Gail, how about you taking over now?
Okay, thanks, Jan. I just want to tell everybody that you can save the chat if you don't know how to do that. When you're looking at the chat, scrolling by at the bottom, there's 3 dots at the bottom, like 3 ellipses. And if you click on that, the
Where?
top of it's, if you, let's see, if you go and you, at the bottom of Zoom, it says chat. And when you click on that, you can see the chat scrolling down on the side of your, and when you go down to the bottom of that column where the chat's scrolling, there's 3 little dots. They're so faint. Too bad they don't make them. Yeah, click on that and a box pops up. At the top of the box, it says save the chat. And when you click on that, it's going to save it in a folder somewhere on your computer that's like Zoom chat. You can search it out. And if you can't find it, we save it ourselves so we can email it to anybody. Our email is neis@neis.org. And you can email us and say, hey, send me that chat. And we'll be happy to do that. Because there's usually so much in there. And I know I find, I have a hard time focusing on the conversation and looking at the chat, and I don't want to lose what's being said while I'm reading the chat. So it's always better for me to go back and read it later. So Dr. Karvelis, this has just been enlightening and just really disheartening in some way that this is going on, that people thought that there's this, there's been all these big energy bills in Illinois to resolve energy issues. And there are, as you pointed out at the beginning, compromises that get made to try and get one thing or another. But to see how much of a compromise this would be to move this forward, I just hope this project can't get off the ground because they just can't find the money to do it. That would be wonderful. The first thing I think that could stop it. The second thing I think that could stop it is just people understanding what it is and reaching out to their legislators. As you've explained tonight, I hope that people will start to understand this more. Hopefully newspapers will cover it some more and explain it, because they say carbon capture and you think, oh, it's going to be clean and somehow.
I think you're right. I think you can expect to see an article in not too distant future on this topic. And I would urge that one way to, when you contact your legislators, is to be very, very neutral on it and to say, all we're asking is for a true independent sustainability analysis on a project which is the world's largest, $2 billion. Before you spend that money, let's have an independent from Northwestern or IIT. But I think that Illinois is too close as project manager, to do that. Somebody needs to do that. And
even they didn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then let's look at the data and let the data tell us which is the right way to go.
Yeah. It'd be nice to know how much wind and solar we could get with those same funds and how fast it could be in operation. So with that, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for, Jan or Dave, do you want to talk about our next night with the experts? Dave, you want to go through that?
Sure. Yes. In fact, I was sort of preparing for this in a different kind of way today. Share screen a moment. This was the view graph that brought me in contact with Dr. Karvelis, and I wanted to share it because you may actually be seeing this next month when we take up small modular reactors with a very well-known scientist and writer. Is it SV Ramana? I always get the initials wrong at the beginning. But he is going to be joining us next month to talk about the small modular reactors, which Illinois is beginning to look at to put on coal plant sites. So make way for, make more room on that site, Dr. Karvelis. You might get some small modular nuclear plants there too, if we don't get the job done. So we invite you next month in March to come for that event.
It's MV, MV. Vermont.
MV, okay. Get rid of that and put this one up and then we'll end. So thank you all for joining us, and Dr. Karvelis, thank you so much. If you would stay on a few minutes after we end the session, we'll have a little dialogue. And the rest of you, we hope you'll join us next month and spread the word. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. It's been long.